Welcome to the One Day at a Time Recovery Podcast, where my guests share their stories of addiction, how they recovered, and the tools and practices they use to stay sober now. Well, Ed, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey, I'm happy to be here. Already having a good time, and we haven't even started recording. Well, now we
I
did.
know, I know. We've been sitting here chit-chatting. I was like, you're saying all this good stuff. I better hit record. We have a tendency to do that on this show. Yeah, I'm excited to talk to. Actually, I'm going to ask you questions about. I know you have 3 books, but I'm specifically going to ask you questions around your second book, Sober Letters to My Drunken Self, best title ever, and your third book, which is about to be released. Congratulations, Hard Lessons from the Hurt Business, Boxing, and the Art of Life. So exciting! Congratulations on your third book. That's quite a feat.
Thank you. I am excited to be here. When you're writing a book, it's like, oh, I don't know where this is coming from. Oh, well, like it's really cool, and I guess like all creative endeavors are like this. You've got this idea, and there is no proof at all that it will ever exist in reality. And then a year goes by, and all of a sudden, there's like this physical, well more like 2 years, if we're being honest. But
Mhm.
there's this
Yeah.
physical thing that came from up here, and it's the coolest thing ever. I'm just I continue to be amazed by the process of
Yeah.
of creation.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, and writing especially is interesting. I had a friend tell me that your elbow is like a BS filter, right? It's like we might have all these ideas, but you start writing and like the truth comes out, and there's something about the creative process where, you kind of go into like a channeling mode, and what wants to be expressed will come out.
Not only that, but what I found one of the reasons why I enjoy writing and why I've been writing online for at this point at least a decade, but realistically probably a decade and a half, is that um the analogy I no, sorry, the analogy I use. It's like when you run a magnet over a piece of steel that is non-magnetized, and a piece of steel has all of these dipoles in them, and they're just spinning around facing different directions, and that's why a piece of steel by itself is not magnetic. It doesn't possess any force.
Interesting.
But when you run a magnet over it that has the force, it aligns them north to south in the same direction, and now you've magnetized that piece of steel. Now it has force, and that is what I think about when, or how I think about writing, is that I got all these crazy spinning ideas up here, and sitting down to write and put some order and structure to them forces them to face in a direction, and they have force. And so I get clarity up here in my head that I did not have beforehand. And I'm able to like see the idea, figure out the idea, really make it work, and produce 600, or not 600, 65,000 words, I think, is what it
That's
came
probably
out to
about
be.
400 pages or something. Listen, we could just end the interview
304
right there. That was
exactly.
brilliant. That is the best analogy I've ever heard. That's great. But before we jump in, I like to play this little game called the lightning round,
Okay.
which is actually pretty slow, so don't panic. But because this is a recovery podcast and we're going to be talking about sobriety stuff. Uh, when you first got sober, or when you first got sober, were there any books that really helped you early on?
No books that help me. I wish, I wish I had read some. Well, that
No
that that's
books.
why that's why I wrote the second book, because I was like, I think I don't usually get into like the weeds of like why someone is struggling, okay, or why someone has an alcohol problem. I'm of the belief that we get you to stop drinking first, and over time, we can reflect on why you were doing that, because we want to reduce the harm. Because if we spend all this time trying to work on why, but you're still drinking, you might go do something irreversible, and now you're sober by choice, because unless you want to drink Pruno, aka jail wine, okay. So we dig into that. I couldn't find anything, like that dealt with what I was specifically struggling with, which was the
Mhm.
guilt and the remorse that I felt for my actions under the influence. So that's why I wrote the second book, Sober Letters to My Drunken Self, because I said, okay, I can't be the only one who thinks like this. I've talked to people at meetings. I know I'm not alone in this thought. Let me write this.
Yeah,
And
that's
that's not to
good.
say it doesn't exist, man. There are a lot of books out there. I'm sure, like I, I think I'm brilliant, but I know I'm not unique. So I'm sure someone wrote it, but I
Yeah,
just
just didn't find it. No, that's good. Okay, so books were not your gateway to peace and sobriety. Is that
no,
fair?
that's very fair.
And you got sober in 2013?
2013, December
Okay.
23rd.
Yeah, and to be fair, I mean, the number of sobriety books and memoirs has absolutely mushroomed over like the last 10 years.
Yeah, that's that publishing industry thing, man. They once they see something that works, they just double down on it. They beat that dead horse until it comes back to life, and then they kill it again, and then they beat it while it's being buried. Um, they
Yeah,
don't
there's a
play.
lot.
There are quite a lot, and because I don't consider myself like an influencer or an authority in that space. I mean, some people might, but I don't think I've not built my following specifically around sobriety. But I'm adjacent to it, and I see the stuff. I'm familiar with the what the first thing that comes to mind is like uh Annie Grace, Naked Mind. I think I've got the book. I got it because I was reading it and seeing, what was out there if I had anything to offer different in that space or anything like
Mm-hmm.
that. I got a few other sober lit books in them. I get them sent to me, so I know it's a big space because people are finally figuring out and the reasons why are probably not good, but the younger generation is drinking way less,
They
and
are.
that's good. And
Yeah.
now it's just us millennial. I'm assuming you're a millennial. It's just us
No,
millennials.
I'm 56.
Wait, really? No kidding. That is the
Yeah.
power of sobriety. I would not have guessed. Are you
Listen, my
serious?
friend, I am telling you, alcohol is hard on your face, and I quit when I was 25. So
Get out.
yeah.
I mean, I'm just like this is video too, so like all people can
No,
see.
those are of you who are not watching this on.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'm
I
not
was
afraid to say I look pretty good for my age.
I was telling you at the beginning before we started recording that like I was implying that I couldn't remember how we connected. Now it's coming back to me. The photo is why I was thrown off. I know the photo, and I'm like in the photo on Raphonic with your
Oh, the
podcast.
podcast
Yeah, I was
artwork?
like,
Yeah.
okay, she like a little. I think your hair was out or something. I was like,
It
okay,
was down. Yeah, today is up.
yeah, wow, that's really impressive.
I'm in my yoga era, so my hair is up a lot lately.
If you are listening to this and not watching, this right here is the endorsement for sobriety. Hold on.
Here's a good reason. I gotta tell, okay, funny story, not so funny. A while ago when I was still back in San Jose, I went to go speak at a women's rehab facility called Mariposa. And, this is
Butterfly.
in my Silicon Valley days, right? Where I was a tech sales rep, right? So I'm driving a BMW, I'm wearing a fancy suit, I carry a bougie bag. I'm driving up to this place, and I was like, I always have this fear that people are not going to relate to me. And because we clean up good, because I didn't have all this going on when I was 25 years old. That's a whole nother story. But I walked up to this place, and the women that were my age were missing teeth. Had bad tattoos. Their skin was challenged, shall we say. Hair, I mean, like, wow. And then they were telling me stories about their families and their economic situations. And I was so brokenhearted. I was like, I just really felt, I was like, oh my God, they have such a long way to go. And it's hard to get sober when you have a family that's super toxic. They're going to go back to the environment that they were sick in, right? So I felt a little disheartened. But what I really realized when I was sharing is our circumstances may be different, but the feelings are all the same. I understand what hopelessness feels like. I understand what confusion and feeling lost and wanting to be different, like I relate to that to my bones. And as we share who we really are and we share our pain, that's like kind of like the healthy trauma bonding. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It's like we have the shared pain, and it's like pain recognizes pain. And so it didn't matter what I looked like. It didn't matter what they looked like. Like we had this heartfelt connection that I left feeling whole. It was really amazing. Like they helped me way more than I did anything for them.
I didn't do the whole 12 steps thing. I'd only gone to like one or two meetings. Um, but I remember the first meeting I went to on my first day of sobriety, and you go to a meeting and everyone like can or cannot share, and someone was sharing. I heard people, well, a lot of people were sharing, but some of the different stories I heard, there was a woman there who had just lost custody of her kids because of her
Oh,
drinking. There was
yeah.
somebody that was there because it was a condition of his release from prison.
Hmm.
And I'm listening to these stories, and my very first thought I was like, yo, I'm not even like these people. This is crazy. I don't belong here. I got a problem, but it hasn't gotten that bad, which is technically correct. Like, I mean, fortunately, I've escaped without any type of permanent damage or a criminal record or anything like that. 4 years later, somebody reached out to me on Twitter, and they told me that they had been following my stuff, and I had written a few articles about my journey to sobriety, things I learned along the way. And he said, "Hey, I'm going to be in your area. I'd like to go to a meeting with you and see you get your chip." I said, "Okay." And here's how out of the culture I was, and I didn't even know what he was talking about. I was like, "Chip, what are you talking about?" So I go, and it's the same style people sharing. This time I'm listening, and this time I related so much more, and I think it was this kind of maturity that comes with the time out, because you can't really, I mean, you really can't. I mean, your brain is just a mess from drinking, from the problems that you're dealing with that you got to manage. There's all these loose threads that are just being pulled at in every direction, and you're going to come undone if you don't fix the problem. Unfortunately, I fixed it. Now that I'm sitting there and it's taking a little time to come together, I'm sitting there and I was like, man, I'm just like everybody in this room, like every single person, even down to some of the problems. There was different problems, different people, but the specific problems weren't where I felt the similarities. It was the mindset, I guess. And we usually use mindset in this kind of positive, uplifting, fix your mindset kind of way. But I felt like no, I get it. Like a lot of people talked about, like they were worried about losing their friends, and
Mm.
I was terrified of that. Not just why I was drinking. That's one of the reasons why I stopped. I said, look, it's only a matter of time before I do or say something where it's beyond forgiveness, and it's like you got your issues, and I hope you take care of them, but this is dead. I didn't want that. My friends are my life.
Yeah.
Um, and also, like when you get sober, it's like, are people going to want to continue to associate with you without the backdrop of alcohol? One of the things I talk about, I've told the story tons of times. I write about it in the book too, the new book, and I think sober letters is, after that first night in that rehab center, I sent the text to my five closest friends, and I told them, I was like, look, I'm being real with you. I got a problem. I got to do it for me. I hope you still rock with me, but if you don't, that's okay. I understand that, but I gotta do it for me. Otherwise, I'm gonna be wiped out. And all five of the guys that I wrote were like super supportive, and they're still in my life today. This was,
Mm,
I wouldn't
beautiful.
I didn't like expect anything. Well, no, I did expect. I mean, maybe somebody would. You never know. It's a terrifying
Yeah.
time, but that feeling of what are you gonna do? What are people gonna think? Are you gonna be able to stick to it? That's another big one, because
Right.
it. But by the time you end up at a meeting, I know, like what's the first step? It means you got a problem, right, or something like that. By the time you end up in the meeting, you admitted that you have that problem. Maybe not. It maybe has not come out of your mouth, but you recognize there's something real, because no one, unless it's a condition of your prison release, no one makes you go to a meeting.
Yeah, I mean, there's the nudge from the judge. Like a lot of people get arrested for
The
DUI
nudge
and they
from the
have to
judge. I'm gonna
go.
start.
Yeah, you get a nudge from the judge and you got to go get a paper signed and stuff like that. But so some people are there because they still don't believe it. So step one is admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our
Yeah.
lives had become unmanageable. So yeah, that's definitely people are grappling with what does that really mean for my life, when they first show up. And I wrote a book called A 12-Step Guide for Skeptics because it's sort of like this is kind of what you need to know going in. And one of the things is look for the similarities, not the differences. So it was so interesting
Right.
to hear you say you went to a meeting, you heard two people share, and you're like, I'm not like either one of those two people. Yet there was a room full of other people, and somebody else they say, keep going to meetings until you hear your story, is kind of one of the things. And listen, I'm not saying like everybody needs to go to 12 step. And listen, this is one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you, because there are a bazillion ways to get sober, and I think they're all valid,
Hmm.
right? And you had a process, and I know I do want to dig into it. And oddly enough, we only got to one of the questions from the lightning round. Um, but so let me just take a little step back and ask you. So you've been sober for a while now. Has there been sort of like an overarching theme, or do you live by a mantra? Is there a quote that sort of is like a guiding principle of your life?
Yeah, there are a few. The two thing the two that really come to mind. Well, there's three. My wife absolutely hates the third one.
Ooh, give me that one first.
Okay, so that one that she hates, and I don't think she hates it, but she mocks me a lot about it. She says like, well, I say you can have anything, you just can't have everything, and I bring that up
All
to
at
her whenever
once.
whenever
Yeah.
we're trying to like figure out how to do things and manage things, and she runs her own business too. And I'm like, look,
Oh, nice.
you know, you get because where it came up initially was she's like, we're trying to figure out this work life balance thing
Yeah.
and all that. And I'm like, look, you get to work whenever you want to, which means you have to work whenever you want to. The taking days off, and I think she's come to understand that just by the nature of clients and the better she's gotten and the more success she's had. It's like, yeah, there's a certain level of flexibility, but there's also um sometimes where it's like you're what's the best way to put this? Flexibly inflexible. At if a client is having an emergency at like 10 p.m., you got to deal with it. Especially
Mhm.
if it's only 5 p.m. where they're at, kind of deal.
Oh, right, right.
So so yeah, that's one I live in, and that just helps me keep things in mind and perspective. But I don't really have a problem with that. I'm more like use that to describe my general approach to life that
Mhm.
that I can do whatever I want. I just can't do everything because I've always had an issue with kind of burning the candle at both ends. Is you'll see when we get to like how I stayed sober, but that's the one. The other two are one, the difficulty of a task is irrelevant as long as if it's vital to your success. That I live by. And the other one is I say, you should try to make the world a better place. But if you can't do that, at least don't mess anything up.
Don't make it
And
worse.
yeah,
Yeah, do no
so
harm.
that I really try to live by that in every interaction that I have, everything I do. And it really helps, especially in the online environment, because I have a decent sized online presence, which means there's going to be people who disagree or want to be trolls or angry. And what I have learned is that there's two kinds of trolls. There are the kind that want nothing to do with they just want to hate. They just want to be
Yeah.
mean and bitter. And a lot of times I've found this, not always, but usually correlates with a low level of intelligence. But that's that's that. Those guys, I got nothing for them but the block because everything I touch touches me. And so I gotta, if I go in there and argue in the DMs, now I'm spending time going to a negative place, and that's bad for me. That affects how I interact with everyone else. I gotta block those. But the other con, it's really interesting. They initially disagree and don't express themselves maturely. I use every opportunity I can to work on what I believe are vital things to living, including that mantra, not making things worse. So always greet the person with kindness, humor, levity, kind of deal. See how they respond. If they're not interested in discourse, dialogue, or talking through things, well, there's nothing I can do. Great, but I just strengthen my muscle of making the world a better place. But if they do, and I've made allies this way, then we come around with friends and respect each other, and maybe nothing comes of it. We're just Twitter friends. Maybe we end up linking up for coffee, or they help share a tweet or something that when I'm talking about my book. So there's really no harm. I find that when you greet people well, and expect the best from them and how you react to them, you could save a lot of situations from going south,
Yeah.
like a lot, and many of them you can turn to your benefit, but that's only if you keep the overarching idea in mind. Like, we're not trying to make things worse.
Yeah. Yeah. I really appreciate that. Those are great. Let's kind of start at the beginning to kind of talk about how we got here, in the sense of like your story. And I typically like to start with family of origin, because whatever happens in childhood kind of sets the stage for what's to come. So tell me a little bit about, like, what were your parents like? Were they drinkers? Did you have siblings? What was your childhood like?
So my childhood was, I mean, I don't know, it was miserable-ish until I could turn 14. And 14 was a really, I didn't realize it at the time, but a big moment for me. But before we get to that, the rest of the childhood. So I'm your typical at-risk youth, raised in public housing projects, single mom. I knew who my father was, I'd see him once or twice a year. I did an exercise a few months ago while I was writing the book, and I tried to like calculate roughly how much time I would have spent with my dad growing up. I came out to something like 30, maybe 40 hours. Um,
Hours.
yeah, hours.
Wow.
Because when
And
my
where,
dad,
what projects did, like, where did you grow up? Were you
well,
in Philadelphia then?
I grew up in Pittsburgh, uh,
Okay.
here in Pittsburgh. But
Oh,
when I
Pittsburgh.
was, I have no memory of my dad ever even living with us. He moved to Philadelphia at some point, but before I had a memory clear enough to remember him ever living with
Sure.
us. So I don't ever remember but as far as I'm concerned, my dad never lived in Pittsburgh.
So it was just always you and your mom.
Yeah, and he would come and see us once or twice a year, and it was like never just to see us. It was always like to see his friends or his
Uh,
other family, and just to lug us along. And I remember being excited to go along with him, not really to spend time with my dad, because I mean I've got some memories. I don't want to paint it like he was completely out there, but like, or gone. But I don't have a lot of memories of just spending time with my dad. Right, but he wasn't there. It's just my mom. My mom loved us, but was just, I mean, I say crazy. I don't know what her issue was. I mean, I do know what her issues were.
you have
So
siblings?
I have one sister. My sister's younger than me, and like, I'm trying to think of the best way to say this. You got to understand the type of person who ends up living in public housing, um, and for generations at that. Those are not, they're not going to have a lot of values and characteristics that are going to be conducive to raising someone to be a strong, competent, capable person. I think my mom did the absolute best she could. Um, and one of the things I had to struggle with for a long time was the forgiveness of both her and my father for different reasons. But part of that forgiveness was understanding that she really was doing the best she could with what she knew, and which with what she knew, and with what she experienced growing up herself.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean, that's the emotional reconciliation for me.
Right. That's the work you did.
But if we look at it objectively, yeah, I mean, I if I had to give her a grade, I'd be like, you like a C minus, man, like a D. You just exposed us to a lot of danger.
Mm.
Um, didn't set a really good example for a lot of things. And the neighborhood I grew up in reflects that. It was a different reason. I mean, I fought a lot. I'm working on the speech and I was trying to make a point. And I remember because I was keeping count of it when I was a kid. I was suspended like 15 times for fighting before I was 15. And
Oh, wow.
that's just at school. That doesn't count the numerous fights in the neighborhood and dealing with that stuff. And then there's like the general undercurrent of violence. I mean, we had it's big now in America, but it had always affected the lower classes. We had active shooter drills. I remember doing them in elementary school for when there were shooters. Like, but it wasn't like somebody coming in to shoot the school, but it was like gang violence around the building.
Mm-hmm.
And my sister-in-law did some work in Philadelphia as part of the City Year program, and just in general, kind of like social outreach. They had the same thing at high schools. They were like shooting things. So it's a big thing now that it's affecting the rest of the country.
Widespread now.
But it's been a thing as far as I remember. I mean, we went to sleep to gunshots. We, I've been outside. I had to hit the dirt because there was drive-by shooting or something.
Oh my
Like,
God.
or like, I got a clear remember one day there was like a block party and there was a car driving down the road chasing another one shooting out the window at it. That's the kind of environment that I spent the first 14 years of my life in.
Wow.
Right when I but I had a real clear thought. I was like, I cannot do another 4 years of this, and I have a chance to do something different. So I told my mom. I don't think my mom really cared where I went either way. And in our school district in Pittsburgh, at the time, we have fewer schools now, so I don't know how it works. And I've been out of school now for over 20 years. But at the time, we had a magnet program.
Mm.
You could apply to a school in the district, and if you got accepted, you'd go. It wasn't your neighborhood feeder school; it was a different school. So I went in and applied to the school I thought would work best for me based on like things I had heard and some of the people that I had met around the city, and got into that school. And that was you want the watershed moment. All of the friends I have today are people I don't have any friends from before age 14. I didn't have
Yeah.
any. I didn't have friends when I was that young. I had like two guys I hung out with. One moved to Atlanta, like partly through middle school, and the other guys like still Project Hood mentality stuck there. We don't really associate at all. The last time I seen him was when my mom died like 3 years ago. Was it 3 years
Mm.
before my son? So 3 years ago, and so no friends from there. All my friends are like from that point in my life. It was in a different socioeconomic bracket. It was the first time I met people who had like both their parents living at home together. I was like, this is crazy to me
Wow.
and stuff. I'm talking to kids and going like, hey, how many fights you guys been in? And they're like, fights? What is wrong with you? I've never been in a fight. And I'm like, you know,
Wow.
uh, stuff like that. And that
Yeah.
experience really, from 14 on, and I didn't spend any. I mean, I spent minimal time at home from,
Yeah.
from high school. Whether because the high school was an hour away on the bus, so I was
Mm.
2 hours a
Oh,
day
you're commuting.
minimum that I was commuting, and then afterwards I'd either play a sport. I got a
That's
job. I'd hang out
amazing.
with my friends at that part of the neighborhood. And then the one summer, I think it was the summer between my junior senior year, I just lived with one of my friends, and then and that really it kept me away from just. I didn't like my home life because at that
Yeah.
point my mom and my sister, because my sister, like for, I'm short compared to my family. I'm 6'1", and that's short, right? Because everyone else is tall. My sister is 5'11". My mom was 5'9". I bring this up to say that they started physically fighting to the point like calling the cops, and I'm like, I don't want to be home at
Yeah.
all. I
Yeah.
hated
Right
being
at
at
home.
home. I hated being at home. I hated my neighborhood. Uh,
Mm. You got out pretty quick.
I kept myself far away, and then that's just that was what my childhood was like. And if it wasn't for where I went to high school, I don't know where my life would go now. I mean, I think about like the people that showed up on my baby shower or the friends I
Yeah.
kicked it with now. I mean, it's just it was a transformative experience. But
Yeah, that's amazing. When did you start drinking?
so here's the funny thing about this, right? A lot of people who have trouble with alcohol, they started drinking when they were youngsters
Yeah.
because of the friends I made in high school. Man, they were some nerds. We were dorks. We thought we were
Nerds
cool.
rule the world.
But they were nerds, man. With good families. None of I didn't drink with any of my friends in high school because they didn't drink.
Yeah.
I didn't have my first drink until I was on a college recruiting trip. I was 18. That's a, that's when it started. I didn't.
Okay. Actually, it's not that uncommon for people to kind of go left in college
Oh yeah,
or sideways.
I didn't realize it until I went to college, but the environment that I had with my friends and then their family treated me like their family, or their family treated me like I was one of theirs.
Yeah.
Never an issue. I didn't realize how much of a protective influence that was on me until it wasn't there. I got to college, man. I lost it. I failed out in the first 3 semesters. Um,
Where did you go?
the first time I went to college, I went to the University of Rochester.
Hmm.
And so that was, I shouldn't have been there, but like it is what it is. And
Was it just too much fun?
well, it's not so much. Look, when you remove restraint, you gonna find whatever you're looking for. College is like that. I
Yeah,
think that's
college
a
is like
really good
that.
way to describe college. You will find whatever you're looking for,
Yeah.
and so I found what I was looking for.
Yeah.
Um, and bad, wrong priorities. Chasing girls, partying, drinking.
Yeah.
On top of that, I was a terrible student in high school, so I didn't think. In fact, a funny story. I had the lowest GPA on the football team. I only remember that because somebody actually called it out. They were like, "Yo, we've been talking to you all this time. You're a smart guy. You're like, you got the lowest GPA on the team. Like, what's going on here?" Um, well, I didn't think I was that bright. I had failed all my math classes. I technically didn't even graduate from high school. They let me walk. Um, why? I think they had sympathy because my dad just died or whatever. And
Your father died when you were in high school?
May 2003, yeah,
Okay.
is when my father died. And so who knows? But not only did I fail high school the first time like the right way, or rather the proper way where you don't achieve the minimum for grade, they actually gave me a chance to make it up in an accelerated program, and I failed that because I got caught plagiarizing the essay. I had to write an essay on the book that inspired Schindler's List. I think the book is called Schindler's List. Uh, and I plagiarized the essay, and so they were like, nope. And so
Yeah. Which is
that's
interesting that you then become a writer in your adult life.
become a writer, and I went back to college. Graduated when I was 33, so I think I started when I was 29, 30. Um,
Uh-huh. Where did you end
and
up graduating from?
Duquesne University here
Okay,
in
nice.
Pittsburgh. And I graduated, funnily enough, because math was by far my worst subject. I couldn't do it.
Yeah, you're obviously like a creative.
I got pinched for plagiarizing in math too, some because there was an essay we had to write, and I was like, okay. But no, then I went on to get a degree in physics, which comes with an automatic minor in math. So,
Wow.
um,
That's wild. That's wild. So let's kind of fast track this too, because I want to hear how you got sober. What was it about drinking? What happened? Like, in 12 step, you hear a lot of people talk about their moment of clarity where they realize I cannot go on this way anymore. And then they begin this journey of like recovery, sobriety, however you want to frame it. What was that like for you? What happened that you were like, I got to quit?
so I remember real clear. There was this girl I was seeing, and I had some friends that were, you know, part of my friend group. And they told the girl, they were like, yo, this guy is like a mess. You don't want to date him. I thought, these are people who I thought were my friends, right? They told her this. And she told me that. And I remember thinking, yo, maybe I got a real problem. I was mad at them too, but I said, maybe I got a real problem. And so, I did the whole thing. We pour out the alcohol. I remember it was the
You were like, I'm gonna quit.
yeah, I was like, I'm gonna quit, right? It was the Captain Jack. I think not Captain Jack. Yeah, the Morgan. I can't remember.
Captain
Captain
Moore.
Morgan. So long as
Yeah.
messed up. The Captain Morgan Black, where it's like 10 extra proof points. We poured it out into the fire because I had smuggled it with us on the camping trip where she told us that. And then in 2 weeks I was back to drinking, right? This would go on and on and on over and over and over again. Um, I think I need to quit, and then quit, and then be right back on. A
Yeah,
lot of
staying
rehab.
stopped is the hard part.
Okay. And then, when I decided I needed to go back to school, I needed money for school. So I enlisted in the National Guard.
Mm.
And when you do that, you got to go to basic training for 10 weeks and then you go to your AIT. And there's no alcohol in basic at all. It is just not even like, I don't even know how you get it, let alone be able to drink it. Now, AIT, you get a lot more freedoms back. You're still not full military. You're still part of trade out, which is like the training part of the military. But you can like go off base and stuff like that with a pass. But you can't drink still. We went off base once, and I remember we stopped by the liquor store to pick up some bottles, little mini bottles to put in a soda while we were watching Bad Grandpa, the old Jackass movie that came out. And that was the only drink I had. So for like 6 months, I didn't have a drink while I was away. And I came back after AIT to start, school and everything like that. Because National Guard, one week in a month, 2 weeks a year. I did that so I could stay fight and I could go to school. That night I came back, I went out and got unbelievably drunk. It was bad. I didn't even remember driving to my friend's house. That's how bad it was. And I woke up and I said, okay, this is a problem. I got things to lose now. That was the big thing for me. I mean, when I look back on it, I realized that I didn't care whether I lived or died. I didn't really have this respect for myself. But I was like, okay, one, I'm in the military now, so that means if I and the reason I joined was so I could go to school, and I'm trying to do this the right way. I'm in school now. I just turned pro, and I just started dating a woman who's not my wife. Like and when I met her, I was like, what a nice girl. Like that was my thought process. I was like, this nice girl, she doesn't need to be exposed to me like this. And so all that came together, and that was the motivation. But in terms of like the internal thing, I think that really helped it stick, which is why I told the military story. For that 6 months I was away, that was the first time in my adult life where I had made friends not in the context of alcohol. A lot of people I still talk to today. A lot of people, because I enlisted when I was 28, a lot of people that were younger than me who like looked up to me and would talk, especially when they found that I fought. I had some fights on YouTube, and then when they found out those, and so there was this whole. It was the first time in my life I felt like I had earned the respect. It wasn't just being liked because I was part of this drinking club, and then people got to know me. They were like, "No, this is a respectable guy, someone I can talk to, look up to, play chess with." We were swapping books. I read the Hunger Games series while I was in, and then this guy put me on another books, and we would talk about these books. And it was a really cool experience. And I said, wow, this is what this feels like. I don't want to ruin this. Plus I got all this other stuff. All of that is what made it me really commit. What made me stick to it, if there were any doubts that I bargained with myself. I said, okay, we're gonna do. I didn't say I was gonna be sober forever. I said we're gonna do this until I either publish a book, graduate from college, or like have a major fight. But after a year, I was like, I'm not going back. I don't want to ever be this guy again because that year I spent really hustling, being so busy I couldn't even go out because I was working at the bank. I was drilling in the army. I was training for fights. Um, I know I was doing something else. Oh, I was going to school. Uh,
That's a
and,
lot.
and that's before we talk about anything that even remotely resembles a social or romantic life. Fortunately, Anna's a wonderful, a really nice girl and a wonderful human. Um, I liked where I was at and where I had work to get, and I said I don't want to ruin this. And when I look at everything that alcohol has brought me, it's been nothing but misery, even
Mhm.
in the slight amounts. And then I'd see like how people behave too. That's another thing that starts to happen. You start to see how people behave when you're not drinking, and you go, "Wow,
Yeah.
there's some bullets I dodged." I say all the time, there's a whole timeline of bullshit that I will never have to deal with because alcohol is not involved.
Yeah.
But
I had
that
a
that
friend that would tell me that it wasn't that something bad happened every time that he drank, but every time something bad happened, he had been drinking.
it's funny. I never said it that way. When I would justify my drinking, people. I come up with all kinds of um, crazy just addict things, like the
Yeah,
things
yeah,
you
yeah,
only
yeah.
say when you're an addict, right?
Yeah.
Two of my favorites, I would say. I'd say, hey, if this person don't like me drunk, they're not gonna like me sober.
That
And
is insanity.
I would say that, whenever I said something crazy or pissed somebody off, like, she wasn't gonna like me. If she don't like me now, she's not gonna like me when I'm not drinking. Craziness. Here's the other thing. I would say, you know, look, 95% of my life is good. It's that,
Yeah,
but whenever I have a problem, that 5% of the time I'm drinking.
yeah,
And I would use that as a justification. I was like, well, 95% of my life is good. Not realizing that, yeah, every time I drink, something bad doesn't happen. But every time something bad happens, it's because, I was drinking. And
no,
and and so I took that idea, kind of inverted it, and was like, oh, this is the
yeah.
reason why I'm good. But like,
No, it's so interesting because that 5% can absolutely determine the
woo,
95.
it's an expected value problem that is severe. It's so negative that once you really sit and work it out, logically you can't justify it.
Yeah,
You
and I think
know?
sometimes people just need a little bit of distance from it. Like I can't imagine that 6 month time period that you spent away from alcohol, like your brain actually starts to heal. Like
Hmm.
your logic, your perspective, your emotions settle down. Like you're in a different environment, and so your values change. It's that saying that you're the average of the five people you spend the most time with. That is in ideas and habits. It really our environment is so important. So it just makes sense to me listening to your story that that time that you had away and in a very positive environment gave you perspective to just really change your reasoning, like letting go of these old stories that were keeping you stuck and really adopting a healthy like growth mindset.
Yeah, that's a hard thing for people to do because it's like, you ever hear that
Yeah,
saying, better the devil you know than the devil you don't?
yeah,
That's supposed to be when you're comparing two or a bad thing to an unknown.
yeah.
You don't even think the thing you're in is bad. You still go, look. A lot of people are afraid to make the jump into something that will be positive because the familiarity.
Yeah,
And familiarity is just familiarity slash comfort. Those are drugs because
yeah,
they do a lot of they keep people stuck. I
they
always
really
Here's
are.
another saying that I live by, that if you sit in shit long enough, eventually it stops thinking. And not only does it stop thinking, but you start to think that,
That it's okay.
well, you start to think nice smells are funny. The closest comparison I can give, and you probably recognize this or can resonate with this because you moved to Boise, is that if you spend your whole life in a city and then you go to the country's gonna smell. It's awful. I mean, like it's terrible. Okay, you spend a few days out there and it doesn't smell terrible, and then you come back to the city, you're like, holy shit, how did I live in all this smog and pollution?
Yeah,
But when you first go to the country, it's like, wow, this place smells awful. No, it's just clean and you're dirty. That's what the problem is.
it's not your norm.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
then
it's not your norm. Yeah,
all that space and sunshine and fresh air. Oh, you get out of here. No, that's healthy for you. You just don't know
well,
any
that was
better
a very
because,
interesting reaction to nature. That was not my experience.
well, I'm a city kid from like the
Yeah,
deep inner city. Like there's the inner city, and then there's like the jail in the inner city. That's like what the,
yeah.
the projects are.
What a contrast. Look how far you've come
Oh, it's
since you.
what I think. One of my favorite things is when people don't think I'm from the projects. And I'm like, now at this point in my life, I've been out the projects longer than I was in.
Yeah,
So I should not smell like the hood, so to speak. But
yeah.
when people find out where I'm from, it
What do you think it was about you that at 14 years old, you're like, this is not for me. I'm going like that was a such a radical, like, I don't want this. I'm gonna go over here because You left a lot of people behind, which indicates that there's a lot of people who stay stuck in that mindset, right? Even the friends that you have from that time that you don't associate with. What was it about you? What happened that you were like,
I think
I deserve something better?
it's it's probably a few things. Some I can control, some I can't. There's the genetic component. I and I'm look. You talk to anybody who knows me, I tend to argue against the level that genetics, the role that like genetics and innate traits play. It's not that I
Mhm.
deny them. I just think you can't do anything about them, and they're not the
You,
end all be
you
all.
have like this awareness that you can be intentional and mindful
Yeah,
about your choices.
intentional, strategic. I'm really big on accountability. I
Yeah.
know I didn't get them values from where I'm from. Okay,
Yeah. You're like, I
where
don't want this.
there's that. The other thing too. I mean, I think that's a different time. Because to me, 14 and making that decision, well, 13 really, that sounds radical today, but then again, I might be dysfunctional because there's also, I had a key to let myself in the house from school when I was 5 because I had to. And so I think a lot of that, you want to talk about like the gifts of a rough upbringing, and there are some, not many, and you certainly I would say the cost exceeds the value, but there is a value there, and part of that value is this incredible self sufficiency, and I realized very early on, way before even that incident, that if I wanted anything done in my life, I would have to get it. It's not just the popular trope. No one's coming to save you. I live that. That's not a trope to me. That's life. And
That was reality.
no one was coming to save me at any point in
You had
time. I
it.
just want.
You had a key to the house at 5 years old. Like you went from school to your home by yourself at 5.
Oh yeah, hey, and look, I thought that was normal because a
Wow.
lot of my mom would put it around my neck so I didn't lose it,
Yeah,
stuff
yeah,
like
I had
that.
that too.
And what do they call them? Latchkey kids. I think that's the
Yeah, yeah,
phrase.
yeah. I'm from the
Um,
latchkey kid era too.
so there's that. You just and there's traumatic experiences that make you believe that. I mean, like my father wasn't around, and when I reflect on some of the guys that my mom dated and the abuse that they brought into the house. Abuse like my sister's too, and she remembers it. And I thought, because when I was writing the book, I wanted to make sure I got some things. I wanted to make sure I got things right because like I don't have a problem pissing off my family. It's not like they talk to me anyway. Maybe they'll buy the book out of
You
spite.
don't talk to your sister?
My sister's the only one I have like my sister's probably here two or three times a week,
Oh, nice.
and really having my son has made her come around even more. So no, I
How old
have a
is your
great.
boy?
He is 2.5 now. Actually, he's a
Oh,
little more than 2.5. He's closer to 3, but who's
yeah, yeah,
keeping
yeah.
count? After the first year, people get annoyed when you say months
Yeah, yeah.
and
You got to convert to years at some point,
so
but I get it.
yeah. But I wanted to ask her about an incident that really stands out in my mind. With this guy my mom was dating, and she got it right. My sister was 2, and he beat the hell out of her, and he used to beat the hell out of us too.
Oh,
But it was awful. But what this has to do with self sufficiency, I think one of the things I figured out early on, and that I had to wrestle with, well, especially once I had my own son, was my opinion about my dad for most of my life was like he wasn't there. He neither hurt me, didn't help me, but he didn't help me or hurt me. He wasn't abusive, but he
neglect is
wasn't.
also hurt. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I learned that taking the adverse childhood
The ACEs
experiences.
score. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, oh wow, I get look, man.
Do you remember what you scored on that?
Oh man, it was like a 7,
Ooh.
6 or 7. I was like, when I took it, I was like, huh, I got some problems. This explains a lot,
Yeah,
actually,
it's a
especially
lot
with
of
the
trauma.
alcohol. But thinking about my dad, I said, look, either he didn't know or he didn't care. Either, and if he didn't know, that means he didn't have a relationship enough with us to where he was aware of this, and so we're being left with these wolves. Uh, you know, and my mom,
Yeah.
to my mom's credit, she actually, well, no, she didn't get rid of him after that, but he didn't last much longer. But I would look. if I found out somebody, no, let's say we split, me and Anna split, and I found out that some guy she was dating hurt the kid, I feel like I've made up my mind that there are some things I will go to jail for a long time for. That's one of them.
I
I can't
understand.
I don't want to go to jail, but you hurt my kid. At the very least, I got to put you in the hospital. I probably won't kill you. Like that is kind of the value I get does not exceed the cost that I'll pay. But if I got to do 2 years, which will probably be probation because I, malicious wounding, I pistol whipped you or something. Okay, well, I'll take that. That's how I think, and I think that's how any father should think. The fact that my dad did not have a reaction or was not in his children's life to the point where he could figure out that something was wrong, that really that bugs me. It still bugs me
Yeah,
if I
for
don't see him
sure.
work through it. But that's the type of self sufficiency. That's where that mentality comes from. Is
Yeah,
well,
and to be fair, extreme independence is actually a sign of trauma. You
yeah,
know,
it's funny because I think we're giving our kid a great life. Um, but one of the things my wife always says is like, look at it's like secure attachment. Like he runs
yeah,
off but he always looks back and he's like, where you go? Okay, good. I'm gonna keep running off and won't go too far. But it's a secure attachment.
yeah,
When
yeah,
he was a baby, oh, he cries. She wants us to get up and now he sleeps through the night, which is great. But at some point, I was like, look, man, he's 14 months old. He's gonna have to figure this thing out. I'm not getting up anymore. You can, but I went and got earplugs, and it took a little. It only,
boundaries. Yeah,
it
boundaries.
only
Yeah,
because you can't let them cry it out too early. Their brains can't even realize that they're the ones keeping them awake. But but at 14 months old, I said, nah, you're gonna figure this out. I gotta sleep. So
yeah,
we
yeah,
can
yeah.
eat.
Self-preservation.
you know.
I understand. I have two boys.
Yeah.
No, that's amazing. Let me ask you, we have a few minutes left, but what do you do now for self-care? Like, did you do therapy to deal with some of that trauma? Is your writing your therapy? What is the healing? It's like getting sober is really not the thing. Like, it's important to get sober, but the thing is the
It's a
healing.
symptom, right? It's a symptom, not the disease.
Yeah.
So no formal therapy on my end. I have my opinions about it, and it might help, it might not, but I have my opinions. But what has helped quite a lot, um, one, the writing. I have a tweet that did pretty well. Where I was just riffing off the cuff and thinking. I said, look, man, my writing is the therapy
It is, yeah.
that I should have got years ago and probably still need, but writing about it and how we were talking about earlier about how it organizes my thoughts, it helps me out. I talk to people. I One of the things I realized when I was younger, I continue to yeah, I value it even more. The power of the relationships you have. Men are really
Huge.
bad at this. I will not let that be me. In fact, one of my big idols, there are these guys at this Panera I go. I got a sip club for coffee because she doesn't drink caffeinated coffee, so I go get my own caffeinated coffee. But there are these guys every day without fail. They're like 80. I think the youngest one is 80. They're meeting and hanging out
Yeah,
every single day.
yeah.
And that like the power relationships matter. So we were my
Huge.
friends and
Yeah.
I talked and my wife, she I never, I don't vent to her or talk about my problems, but because of how she is and her family, um, it sets an example. And because I want to be good. And by
Yeah.
good I mean I'll be more specific. I don't want to do any harm. I want to make sure that she did not make the wrong choice, and I want to be a guiding, good role model for my son.
Mhm.
Um, I'm always I say, look, I got my flaws. One flaw I don't have, which I think negates a lot of the others, is if I'm wrong, I admit that, and I do it proactively. I don't wait for you to have a problem. Anytime we have a disagreement, I really sit and think on it because I've I would like to think I've come far enough to recognize when I've made a mistake. emotionally. And if I don't say anything, and sometimes that happens, I'm like, nah, you were wrong. But but uh but a lot of times it ain't that, and I proactively approach the thing and open up a dialogue. So for me, what has really helped, I guess, to sum all that up, is really being communicative and being willing to admit when you've made a mistake, and also being willing to learn from it. If you're not willing, like if you don't want to get better, there are a lot of people who are like, and this blows my mind, but they're absolutely fine without operating at this suboptimal, closed off space where they're not going to. And I guess I get it too, because you can only solve a problem if you look at it and face it. And some people don't
Yeah.
want to face things. Like for me, this is something that I argue with people a lot about. Not a lot, but enough that part of what has helped me deal with my mom, even when she was alive, is that I had to look at and accept that she made a lot of mistakes. A lot of guys from my background hold their mom in this super high regard. She can do no wrong. She raised us when the dad split, whatever. That's cool and that's noble. That doesn't mean she didn't set you up for failure. And you should be mad at your dad too, but you also got to look at the issues there. Otherwise, you can never deal with them. And my mom and I clashed a lot about this. But I said, look, one of the reasons why you're so proud of me is because because I did not follow in the footsteps, and I did not follow in those footsteps because I'm able to look at things and go, what you're doing is not going to work out for my life. So
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's so important. It's so funny is that those of us in recovery who are like on this healing journey, we do have to look at our past and look at our parents, and acknowledging the truth with honesty is challenging because no matter how bad your parents messed up, we still love them.
yeah,
But there is something very significant and important about acknowledging reality. Like these are the facts. This isn't necessarily an indictment of mom or dad, but these are the facts. And the facts are that we are affected negatively. That happened. Like that, those are just the facts. And
yeah,
then the question becomes, what are we going to do about it? And I really appreciate how you have been able to acknowledge and recognize the facts. And, in that, after that comes the forgiveness and the compassion. It's like,
yeah.
yeah, you did do the best you could, but at first the acknowledgement and the acceptance has to come first, don't you think?
Yeah, I would, because look, there was a period I was angry in my
Rightly
early
so.
20s,
Rightly
late
so.
teens, early 20s, angry,
Valid.
and did not have a speaking relationship with my mom,
Valid.
but through some just random intervention, oddly enough, stealing books, I figured out that I need to work on the forgiveness part,
Yeah.
and part of that it was acknowledging, but also then recognizing, kind of, to sum up forgiveness, realizing that they did the best they could with what they had, and if you were in their position, you would have done the exact same thing. That doesn't
Yeah.
excuse the action, but it allows you to humanize them and see them as not
Right.
different from yourself, or see yourself as any better than them, just someone in different circumstances with different perspectives. And so that really helped me.
Yeah. And we just try to do a little bit better than they did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's all you can do.
It really is. Well, listen, I am so grateful for this time that we've had to be able to spend together. I really appreciate your story. I really admire the way that you had a spark, a flame that was like, I deserve something better. Like, and that you pursued that, and although, yeah, you had your fair amount of challenges, who doesn't?
Yeah,
Who doesn't? And I really appreciate that you're taking your story and putting it out there for others, right? Because hope, the acronym from hope is hearing other people's experiences. So the book that wasn't available to you when you first got sober, you have gifted that to the world. And I think that is so important.
yeah. I'm. It's the second best thing I've ever done so far. The first being
Yeah.
my kid. Hopefully, no one wants to raise a serial killer, and I think we're on pace to not do that. So
Odds are good that you'll be
odds to go over.
okay.
Right now, he loves and smiles and laughs, but so did every serial killer baby. So
Listen,
Um,
I don't know. I didn't know them as babies, but fingers crossed. Well, listen, thank you so much for your time today, and congratulations on your books and your third book, Hard Lessons from the Hurt Business, Boxing and the Art of Life. I will. When is it coming out?
August 5th.
August 5th. Okay, coming up pretty soon. So,
Yeah, sooner than, it's like hurry up and wait. That's the saying in the
yeah,
military. Hurry up and wait.
hurry up and wait.
You do all this work at the front, and then there's nothing, and they're like, "Oh, by the way, we need you to do everything in 4 weeks." And it's like, "All right,
Yeah. Super fun. Well, listen, by the time this episode comes out, it'll be available. So I will leave links to the book in the show notes. And you're gonna, I'm assuming Barnes& and Noble, Amazon, all
Barnes
that.
and Noble, Amazon. Look, you can even get the book at Target. I didn't even know it was available at Target.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah, publishing houses they don't do a lot great, but what they okay, I don't want to say that.
Listen, don't be
They
bagging
have
on
their
us.
they have their
Don't be
strengths and their
biting the hand.
weaknesses. One of their strengths is distribution.
Distribution, awesome.
They can distribute, and what my agent then will be able to negotiate stuff overseas and
Ah,
uh,
brilliant, brilliant.
big
Well,
difference.
congratulations, and thank you so much for your time today.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate it. Can you stick around before this stops or
Yeah,
after
hang on.
this stops?